By 1919, the British Empire had reached the peak of its powers, controlling almost a quarter of the Earth's surface and ruling over 485 million people. They had the biggest guns and the biggest navy the world had ever seen, dominating both land and sea. Today, the United Kingdom no longer has the same clout, made even more apparent with the recent decline in economic growth, which shrunk by 0.5% in July, far higher than analysts expected. Annual growth has been on a downward trend, remaining sluggish after reopening after the pandemic. Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have also cut their full-year growth forecast for the country's GDP, expecting a meager expansion between 0.3 and 0.4%. The decline in growth is driven by a fall in consumer demand due to higher interest rates, with the current bank rate set at 5.5%, its highest level since February 2008. The government is at war with inflation, but this is increasing the cost of borrowing for mortgage holders. And as demand shrinks, so too does the number of employed in the country. In the last year, the unemployment rate has been gradually going up, hitting its highest level in over 2 years at 4.3% in the May to July period. A wave of new strikes in the health and education sectors have also played a role in slowing the economy, causing a decline in output by 2.1% in the health industry and 1.1% in the education sector. Many employees, including doctors, are demanding higher pay as rising inflation is pushing the cost of living even higher.
We asked the government in October to meet with us and discuss the issues that we were raising, which are about how our pay has dropped over 30% in the last 15 years. Unfortunately, now we're on our 5th round of strike action because the government refused to negotiate with us and produce a credible offer.
Analysts have also blamed July's wet weather, affecting activity in many sectors like tourism and retail. And as rain pours over the City of London, economists say prospects of a great economic expansion are likely to be dampened for years to come. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Let's get more on this now with Victoria Scholar in London. She's Head of Investment at Interactive Investor. Good to have you back with us, Victoria. Now, the latest GDP figures were worse than analysts had expected and continue this trend of weak growth in the UK economy. Was this contraction, do you think, merely a blip driven by those ongoing strike action as well as the wet weather?
Well, like you say, we saw that the economy shrank by 0.5% in July, which was the steepest drop we've seen since December, and it reversed growth of 0.5% in the previous month, falling short of expectations. The UK is mainly a service sector driven economy, and we saw particular weakness there. That was partly because of a slide in human health activity with doctors' strikes weighing on economic activity. There was also industrial action in other sectors like teachers and rail staff, which weighed on the economy, as well as the wet weather conditions, which impacted the construction sector and retail, as well as consumers spent more time indoors rather than shopping on the high street. But offsetting an even steeper slide in GDP was a busy summer of sporting events and theme park visits during the school holidays.
Now, the UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said the latest figures showed, quote, many reasons to be confident about the future and that the UK economy was now on course to grow faster than Germany, France and Italy. Do you share the same optimism?
Well, I think the latest figures are a bit of a reality check after the jump in GDP in June, as well as the recent statistical upward revisions we had from the Office for National Statistics for the period post-COVID and the UK's recovery there, which is actually better than we had previously thought. But economists and the Bank of England are really weighing up cooling inflation and strong wage growth on the plus side against the uptick in the unemployment rate. We've also had disappointing PMI data and sluggish retail sales figures as well. So it does feel as though the Chancellor is trying to paint a rosy picture, and there are some reasons for optimism. But with rising interest rates and elevated inflation, there is still a risk of a shallow recession this year.
Well, let's talk about inflation because, as you say, the Bank of England has been hiking rates in order to bring the rising cost of consumer prices down. Now, could this contraction and the weaker GDP growth in general be a sign that perhaps these rate hikes are indeed working?
Well, that's right, because a rising interest rate policy is really designed to bring down inflation back towards the Bank of England's 2% target. But a real side effect of this, by making borrowing more expensive for consumers and businesses, is that it takes the heat out of the economy and can really slow the economy down. And some economists have even suggested that a recession is actually what we need to try and get us out of this high inflation environment and get rid of that risk of a wage price spiral and even prolonged inflation. So perhaps a softening economy is what we might have to endure, at least in the short term, try and get the price environment towards a more stable level so that wages are outpacing inflation again and living standards go up, and generally the affordability of goods and services improves as well.